Success in the music business begins with a dream, a vision. This podcast will give you, the listener, the insight and tools to turn that vision into a reality. Meet the industry professionals who work day by day behind the scenes, helping to make those dreams come true. Welcome to the business side of music.
Very special edition here of the business side of music. Sitting in the studio, not the business side of music, Music Dog Studios, but all the way, I believe, in Salt Lake City or thereabouts.
We're in Provo, Utah at Rock Canyon Studios here. I partnered here with my friend Gaynor Brunson. This is his studio, and we just get to do all sorts of things here. And what a fun thing to be part of your show here, Bob. Thanks for having me on.
Well, it's none other, folks, than Nathan Osmond. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, brother. It's great to be here with you. Isn't it amazing what technology can do for us these days?
Yeah. And it only took us a half an hour to set it up.
Only a half hour setup, you know. Thank goodness we didn't have any cartage, you know.
Yeah. and sound check. So, Nathan, you know, you have a name that is obviously easily recognizable.
Oh, thank you.
You come from that lineage of, you know, the Osmond family. When I did some research, I found out that you're actually one, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you're actually one of 39 children?
Well, there's, I think, about 57 grandkids on the Osmond side. I'm one of 8 boys. I'm Alan's son. See, the number one question I'm asked as an Osmond is, who's your daddy, right?
Yeah,
so my daddy is Alan Osmond. He's the oldest of the performing brothers. Now, they had 2 older brothers that were deaf, Earl and Tom, and so they didn't do a lot of performing with the brothers. So my father, being the oldest that could hear, became the leader of that group, the spokesperson, and yeah, he'd snap his fingers, he'd go 1, and they'd all line up, you know. He had to run a tight ship with that many kids.
I guess so. But you have really set a course for yourself, which I think is very intriguing. And I love the idea that you are really your own individual and haven't relied so much on your uncles or aunts or your dad. How, and this is a question I always ask somebody, I always ask someone who's on the show, but how did you decide, how did you determine that you wanted to be in the music business?
You know what? I grew up on the set of the Donny and Marie show with my brothers. You know, we watched our father and uncles perform and Aunt Marie, and we just thought it was so fun. We watched the Andy Williams reruns, you know, the tapes that we pop in, and we started singing side by side and all these barbershop harmonies, and we were singing it in 2-part harmony. We just had a knack for it, an ear for it. My father's like, who taught him that? And so he started teaching us a 3rd part, then a 4th part. And as we started to sing at church and local things, you know, my father told us, listen, boys, I'm not just going to hand this to you. We were known as the one-take Osmonds on the Andy Williams shows because we rehearsed every single day, all day long. We earned every standing ovation. If you want to get into this business, prove it. Show your father you want it, earn it, and then I'll start opening some doors for you. So we really buckled down. We were up every morning at 6 a.m. singing, and then after school, sitting in like, you know, a semicircle, just start woodshedding those harmonies. And our friends would knock on the door. Can you guys come out and play basketball? Oh, sorry, we got to rehearse. You know, we just had to show our dad that we really wanted this thing, so we went after it. But here's the point, though. We're so grateful that he taught us how to work hard, how to work smart, because this is a tough business, and you got to have thick skin in this business. So my brothers and I, we got, you know, an opportunity to be on television locally in Utah on this talent showcase with Eugene Zeleznik. Well, People magazine wrote an article about this new generation of Osmonds. Well, guess who read that article, Bob? None other than the Bob Hope. And he's like, I want those boys on my show. So guess who got on his show? We did. And we recreated the Osmonds, kind of nostalgic, you know, the same routines that they did with Bob when they were kids. Well, you know, Curb Records saw that. They signed us, and we had, you know, 3 songs in the top 40 in the UK on Epic Sony, and we used to tour with New Kids on the Block, Color Me Bad, Salt and Pepper, Naughty by Nature, Extreme, a lot of these 90s bands. And it was a lot of fun. But then, we got to the point where my father was hit with something called multiple sclerosis, and his brothers bought a theater in Branson. And they're like, hey, Alan, how would you like to do what you do, and the boys as well, and never have to leave home? The audiences come to you. Well, it wasn't a career move, but it was fun. And it kept us together as a family. So we all moved out to Branson. My brothers and I won, Best Young Group of the Year 3 years in a row. We kind of laughed, and I said, I think we're the only young group in Branson at the time. But hey, we had a good time. And that's where I got turned on to this genre called country music. And I even told Garth Brooks this when we sat down together. I said, my cousin Travis is a hick. And he sat me down outside the Osmond Family Theater in his Ford F-150, popped in a cassette, and he said, now you listen to this guy Garth. And I was like, this is country music? Thunder Rolls came on. I'm like, this is cool. And I was hooked. But anyways, I never thought that I would go off and do my own solo career as a country singer. But as soon as I got married, I done some musical theater. I did Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat for 2 years. And then after I got married in 2002, I did that show again along with Annie Get Your Gun. And my beautiful bride, I've only been married to her for about 2 months, sees me come out in this cowboy hat and chaps, a vest and everything. I was playing Mac in the show. She goes, you're supposed to be a country singer. And I said, what? I like country, but I'd never considered going off and doing my own thing. And so I took her seriously. I'm a songwriter, and I love to play music, and I love to write music. I've done R&B. I've had, people like Brian McKnight produce some of my stuff, or my brother David, and, and I always wanted to, be a good songwriter. Well, the day came when I got the chance to work with Lonestar. They came here to Utah, and Dean Sams is the keyboard player. Well, I'm a keyboard player, so I wanted to tell those guys, I want to come out to Nashville and I want to write with you guys. And so I went up to the guy I had the most in common with, that was Dean Sams, and I said, hey, is that your keyboard over there? Of course it was. He was just playing it. But I said, hey, I'm a keyboard player, told him a little bit about my songwriting. I said, it's always been my dream to come to Nashville and write with you guys. You never do a bad song. And he says, well, here's my email. He wrote it down on a napkin, and he gave it to me. And so did Richie McDonald, their lead singer, and I thought, it can't be that easy. I've learned in life, Bob, that you got to swim out to meet your ship. You don't wait for it to come into dock. You got to swim out to meet your ship. So I created the opportunity. I didn't have a laptop at the time. All I had was my email at home. So I said, Dean, I'm coming out to Nashville December. It was early December because I figured they'd be off the road. I had to use some strategery, right, as George Bush would put it. And I said, listen, I'm coming out. I'd like to take you up on your offer to write with Lonestar. He says, great. I'm producing a duo during that time. As we get closer to that day, email me. Let me know. I'll let you know what I can and can't do. Well, I said, great. So I booked my flight, my rent-a-car, my hotel room, and I'm going to Nashville to write with Lonestar. This is like a dream come true. Well, it gets a couple days before I was supposed to fly out, and I don't have his phone number. So I email him, hey, Dean, I'm excited to write with you. I'm coming to Nashville. Nothing. Silence. Crickets. He doesn't get back to me. I'm like, okay, I'm flying out tomorrow. Dean, do you have a phone number I can reach you? I don't have a laptop. All I have is your email. Still no response. And I'm going, oh, gosh. Make the most of this trip. I went out blindly to Nashville, and I said, network. I called everyone and their dog. Like, do you have a phone number on Lonestar and blah, blah, blah. Finally, I get with Joel Stevenette, and he had played for Jody Messina drums. He said, I think I got like their tour manager's number. I said, great. So I called up Coach, and I was like, Coach, this is Nathan Osmond. It was fun working with you at Stadium of Fire on the 4th of July this year. I'm supposed to be out here writing with Dean Sams. I know he's got a new studio. I'm trying to prove I knew the guy. Do you happen to have like a studio number on the guy? And he says, all I have is his personal cell phone number. I said, great. And I asked for it. He gave it to me. So now I'm in the studio hanging out with Jason Deere, another great producer and songwriter friend. Miranda Lambert's in the other studio right before she made it big. That's how far back this goes. And I say, Dean, I'm hanging out with Miranda. I'm here with Jason, and I'm excited. I just got your number from Coach. He's like, I thought I gave you my number. I said, no, I got it from Coach. He says, let me call you back in 10. Well, guess what, Bob? Guess who doesn't call me back in 10 or an hour or 4 hours or 6 hours? I'm starting to think like he thinks I'm some psycho fan who's in Nashville who now has his phone number. All the negative thoughts came to my brain, and I said, stop it. You go down to this little street called Broadway that you've heard so much about, and you get turned on by this town. I said, I'm going to make the most of this trip, whether he calls me back or not. So I go down, I visit Legends Corner, I go to Tootsie's, I have like a little recorder, I'm interviewing like cowboys on the street. Tell me more about, what's this Ryman Auditorium? That's the original Opry House? I was getting educated on Nashville. My wife even had a dream, Bob, that I had been discovered by singing karaoke. So I saw Wannabes down there on Broadway. I waited for like a whole hour just to get the opportunity to see if my wife was right. Nobody, I mean, I got a standing ovation, but nobody discovered me that night. But you know what it did? It kept me out late enough so that when I was out in front of the Wild Horse Saloon, which just got purchased, listen to this. My phone goes off, and it's Dean Sams, and he's like, Nathan, I'm an idiot. I totally I forgot to call you back. What are you doing right now? I said, Dean, I'm in my car driving to your house. How the heck do I get there? He just laughed. He's like, Nathan, I love your tenacity. That's what you need to make it in Nashville. And he says, I write my best stuff late at night. Come on over. So I went over. Laurie Killian Starr, another great songwriter, was sitting there with him. And basically, he sat me down at his piano. And he said, Nathan, let me see what you got. In other words, prove yourself. You have to prepare for these moments. I've learned this. This is where my father's advice came into play. I had to be ready when the opportunity presented itself. So I started playing some of my best snippets of my best songs. He's like, you wrote that? I said, yeah. Play another one. So I whipped out another good one. He's like, wow. It's like, so I played about 3 snippets. Then finally he cuts me off. He goes, all right, Nathan, 3 things. Number 1, I hate you. And here I'm new to Nashville, so I get nervous. And he says, because I'm a keyboard player, and you make that look easy. So I was like, oh, good. Number 2, what are you doing in Utah? You got to get out here to Nashville. You have so much talent. He said, we got to get you writing some tunes out here. Number 3, tomorrow night at 9 o'clock, guess who's coming to my house to write? You are. So I'm like lighting it up, and I'm like, holy cow. And so in my brain, I'm talking to myself. You know, you're talking about the business sense right here, the business side of music. I said, play up on his ego a little bit. This is like a superstar. So I said, Dean, do you happen to have any starters? You know, let's pick one of your songs. Let's write one of yours. And I had that recorder, and he played da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, this great, beautiful medley on the piano. And I said, that's gorgeous. Let's write that one. Anyways, I took that melody back to that hotel, and I spent all day on that song, just fine-tuning it and writing it. 9 o'clock shows up the next night. I'm in his studio again, sitting on his piano, and guess who whips that song out? I said, hey, Dean, check this out. I kind of threw this together. I know I've always wanted to believe. He's like, you wrote that? I said, yeah, I just kind of threw it together. I spent all day on that song, baby. But you know what? He loved it, and then Laurie and he and I, we tweaked it, we made it better, and then we had time to actually record it. So I drive home listening to a demo that I had just written with Lonestar. I played the keys on it, and I did the vocals. And I had tears streaming down my face.
It's obviously more than just a song. It's a moment in time that moved you. And I can still see the emotion of it all. And you know what? I think that's probably one of the most beautiful things in the world, that especially at your age or my age, that moments like that can still just touch our heart and touch our soul. And you know, it's we were talking about a little earlier before the show that, you know, sometimes as men we still scream like little girls. But it's okay if we cry too, because you know we're in a very emotional business.
Absolutely, Bob.
And I think sometimes that in itself gets in the way of the music aspect of it. We let our emotions run. My wife is famous for saying to me, "You really don't like to make money, do you?"
Trust me, I've heard those words. My father, who sold over 100 million records. Keep it a hobby. Keep it a hobby, right? It's like, why would a man that sold over 100 million records tell his own son to keep it a hobby? Guess who I didn't tell I was going to Nashville? My father, my brothers, my mother, Annie Osmond, Donny and Marie. I didn't tell any of them I was going out. I always wonder why, Bob, that people that share our DNA are sometimes the biggest toxic dream busters. The people that we love. I mean, I always ask that question when I do a lot of speaking, and I ask audiences, how many, by a show of hands, have someone that you're related to that just loves you so much they don't want to see you get hurt? Do people get hurt in this business, Bob?
every single day.
So I get why the warnings. But here's the thing. Do they not think I have the talent? Do they not believe in me enough? Because I have to have enough belief to believe that I can make it. So without telling anybody, I went out and pursued that dream. And then I come home with a demo of Lonestar and myself doing a song together that we just wrote. I still didn't show them that yet because I wanted to go after something, because only two weeks later, guess what happened? We were going to write that song for Rascal Flatts, but they already had their album in the can. So guess what Dean says to me? He's like, Nathan, we love this song so much, we're going to record it. The first song I ever write in Nashville gets tied up by Lonestar? This is too good to be true. And it was, because 2 weeks after that, guess what happens? After 14 years as their lead singer, my friend Richie McDonald emails the band and says, hey guys, I'm going to go solo. I'm going to sing some gospel music now. And that was just so devastating to those guys and to the band, and like they were livid. And Dean's just venting to me, and I'm like, I'm thinking to myself, what about the song? What about the opportunity? Oh, there goes one of my favorite bands. Well, guess what? I had to think fast. I had to turn lemons into lemonade. I said, well, Dean, if you guys aren't going to record that song, do you mind if I do? And he says, well, dude, why don't you just come to my studio and I'll produce you? And that's how I got my feet in the door, my big size 16s right here, baby. I got him in the doors in Nashville. Now I got Lonestar producing me. And I found something really cool. You talk about the business side of music. I found that if you want to sound like the guys on the radio, go to Nashville and get the guys that are on the radio to play on your stuff. And he was a great writer, great producer, found some great tunes. I cut 4 sides out there in Nashville. Well, then, ... the rest of the story, I take those 4 sides and I contact my friend Gary Baker, who you know wrote the song I Swear. He wrote I'm Already There for Lonestar. Great writer. He was a bass player for my Aunt Marie, your bass player. And so I reached out to this old contact I had with Gary and with Frank Myers, and I was like, hey, I'd love to play you guys some stuff that I'm cutting. I'm like, my dream is to do this album. And so I played him what Dean had produced, and he says, well, heck, come on down to Florence, Alabama, right outside of Muscle Shoals. I got my noise block, studio down there. Let's go ahead and have you come down and I'll produce you. So I got 2 producers on my first album, 2 amazing musicians and songwriters, and we got the best players. I mean, you name it, they were on my album. And it took 2 years to get that album just the way I wanted it, because I've learned from my father, you only have one shot at a first impression. So before you go knock doors on Music Row, by the way, you better have your stuff together. And by the way, I had to think about the name Osmond. Do I go under the name Osmond, or do I go under the name Nathan George? That's my middle name. That sounds country. Because I had heard from people. I went to Marie. I said, Marie, do I use Osmond? And she goes, no, don't. I wouldn't use Osmond. Now, she's changed her story since. But here's the thing, is that she said, people are prejudge it. I want you to have your best shot, doing this. So, I want them to buy you. Anyway, so then I went to Donny. I said, what do you think? He says, Nathan, people go on American Idol, America's Got Talent, The Voice, because they want some instant street cred. They want to be part of a brand, something that gives them some instant credibility. You've got something built in. It's called Osmond. Now, don't abuse it. Let it be a layer in the cake like we talked about. It's going to come out eventually. And one thing I love about country music is that they love their roots. It's all about where they come from. Osmond is a brand. Let it be a layer in the cake, but then you've got to have the goods. So I spent 2 years getting that album polished. And I walked in there to Curb Records, Lyric Street, Black River Music. We walked up and down. I went over to Taylor Swift's label. I met with everybody. It was so fun as I sat there with Curb Records. They're listening. It's like, wow, this is good stuff. Like, I'm surprised how country it is. I said, well, it's country music. He goes, no, you don't realize. Pop has taken over the country scene. We've gone so far into the pop realm. We're looking for a guy to bring it back into country. I was like, wow. And then I sat there at, in the GAC offices, and I watched 15 people all getting into my stuff. And I'm like, I'm so glad I listened to my father. I took the time to really get my stuff together. My name, my brand, my look, my sound. I knew who I was, and I went there. It took me 2+ years to get there. But then I put my best foot forward, and I got signed on a label. We've had 4 consecutive #1s since then. And even the third one that I had, I actually got to replace my friend Vince Gill on this recording with Jack Green. You know, the very first ever CMA award winner. In fact, that night, guess what? The very first CMA, Loretta Lynn said that if he'd been wearing a skirt that night, he would have taken them all home. You know, Jack Green was an amazing legend. And so they said, hey, Vince Gill said he doesn't want him to release that as a single because he's got a new album coming out. How would you like to replace Vince on that recording with Jack Green? And the two of you release that as a duet. I said, you don't have to ask me twice. I'd love to record with Jack Green. And so we did, and that went to #1 on the indie charts. But my latest song that went to #1 is called Stars and Stripes, and I got to write that, and it's all about our troops. That's opened doors for me to do a lot with our veterans and our active duty. You know, they even made me an honorary command sergeant major. They let me in the Pentagon, baby. Isn't that crazy? But you know what? I just tell you this. I love country music, and I love the people in it. I started realizing that as my father and uncles had some big hits in the 80s in country. I said, you know what? Some of the nicest, most down-to-earth people I've ever met in this business are the country folk. And I think I can hang with them. And so it's just been a really good decision. My wife was inspired. I'm so grateful I went country.
We're in the studio here today with Nathan Osmond, talking about his life and his career.
This is Mark Allen Barnett, singer, songwriter, creative coach, and mentor. Are you an artist or songwriter, or a family member or friend of someone who is? Are you trying to find your way through the often confusing world of today's music business? I'm here to help. Over the past 40 years, I've written and recorded hit songs, have had more than my share of live performances, and have seen the ups and downs of the music industry and what Music City, also known as Nashville, has to offer. I'm here to share that information with you. The Mark Allen Barnett Songwriting Tours of Nashville are a one-day to multi-day private interactive workshops developed to help you discover your best approach to songwriting, performing in front of a live audience, along with the correct way to network within the music industry. Our workshops are based around what you need to know. While in Nashville, you get an insight from behind the scenes, learn about the history of Music City, separate fact from fiction, and give yourself or a loved one the time of your life. This workshop makes the perfect gift for someone you love who wants to get their foot in the door of the music business the right way. For more information, go to www.markallenbarnett.com or www.musicchoosesyou.com. Remember, you don't choose music. Music chooses you.
Back in the studio here, Nathan Osmond, all the way from Provo, Utah.
You know, this is where Fletch went in that first movie, Fletch.
Yes,
he
that's
came
right.
From Provo, baby. You know, Provo is, by the way, one of the #1 places on the earth for uploads onto YouTube. There's a lot of indie artists here in this city. I mean, Imagine Dragons came out of here. You know, it's amazing. You got like Neon Trees and a bunch of groups that have come out of Provo. It's crazy. I was raised in Provo, up on Osmond Lane. That's right. We've all moved away from there, so now they call it Osmond Left. But anyways, we love it here in Utah. I now live in a city called American Fork, but Nashville has been my second home. And I remember, because they have that whole term, it's talking about, you know, must be present to win. You've heard that term. You're talking about the business side of the music business. I was opening up for Chris Young, and at the time I was living with Jack Green out in Mount Juliet, you know, and just outside of Nashville. And so I hadn't been there long enough to know that it's pronounced Mount Juliet. And I said, yeah, I live in Mount Juliet. He goes, you're not from around there, are you? I said, what gave it away? He goes, we pronounce it Mount Juliet. I'm like, okay. So I learned from Chris Young how to pronounce that town. But you know what? You do have to be present to win. There is a game that goes on, and you got to be willing to play it. And so I asked a lot of advice getting into the music industry from my family that's already done so well in this industry. I called Donny. He says, Donny says, Nathan, you've got to have thick skin in this game. Okay? Because not everybody's going to like you. And that's the hardest thing for us Osmonds. We want everybody to like us. They're not. They're not going to. Some people hate country music, so get used to it. And some people don't like the Osmonds. Get used to it. You know, the key is just be who you are. Be authentically you. And don't hang around yes men. I said, what's that? You know, you're the greatest. You could do no wrong. Oh, you're perfect. No, you're not. Now, don't hang around negative people, he said, but be around people that can shoot straight with you, like my father was to him. My father was Donny Osmond's coach. See, he was over on the side playing like the rhythm guitar, and he could see the whole show from a different perspective. He said, Donny, you're spending too much time on that side. Come over and play to this side. Get down on your knee. He was a producer. He produced the Donny and Marie shows. They were in the Guinness Book of World Records for the most watched variety TV show. They had a 60 share on the networks. That's like Super Bowl ratings every week. That's, of course, you only had, 3 or 4 networks, but that's a lot of people watching you. And I grew up on those shows. So my father, having a dad that's been there in the industry, someone that can really shoot straight, he always said, hey, you're flat, fix it. Now, some people might think that's harsh, but you get right down to the business of fixing it. So we learned to have thick skin in this industry because we know not everybody's going to like us. But the key is, at the end of the day, who cares? Why are you doing it? Are you doing it for that person that doesn't like you? You're doing it for you. I've learned that in music, you got to do it because you love it. Right? You got to do your own sound. And I find there's a lot of copycats out there. Everyone's trying to mimic somebody else's style. Why are you doing that? I mean, if I were to put a white glove on here, Bob, and go, hee hee, you know who I'm imitating. If I do this, you think, okay, Madonna, right? These are called signature moves. My friend Jason Hewlett showed me this. We've got to have our own signature moves. And you can be inspired by somebody, but at the end of the day, don't try and copy them. When it comes to songwriting too, Bob, I've learned that my father told me this. He says, the best songs aren't written, they're rewritten. Now, this goes along with being influenced by your favorite artists. See, my father really liked this song called Jeremiah Was a Bullfrog, Joy to the World, and he just loved that song so much he wanted to write one just like it. So if you go back and listen to Jeremiah was a bullfrog, it was a good friend of mine, well, listen to this. What are you doing tonight? You got no place to go. Down by the lazy river was inspired by Joy to the World. So my father taught me as a songwriter, if you want to write a hit song, find a hit song you love and write one just like it. Be inspired. Now, don't copy it, but be inspired. See, people felt that groove at Down by the Lazy River and I love this because it felt familiar to them. So be inspired by other people. I sat down with Garth Brooks. I'll have to send you this picture. But my uncles always told me, you look like Garth. I'm like, what? That's the biggest compliment I ever get when I perform is because he's the guy that inspired me. Him, I got to give Colin Ray some shout outs, John Michael Montgomery, and Vince Gill. Those 4, they talk about your Mount Rushmore of country music. That's probably the 4 that got me. And the point is that I showed Garth something. I said, I was having some fun. Don't get a restraining order, Garth. But my uncle said I look like you. And so I had some fun with Photoshop. I took a photo, I channeled my inner Garth. And I took half my face and half his face. I meshed them together. I call it Garth Osmond. I'll send it to you so you can see it.
Please do.
Tricia here would grab my phone. She's like, oh my gosh, Garth, you found your doppelganger. I was like, oh my gosh. It was hilarious. We're all laughing. But you know what? You got to be inspired by people that inspire you. I told him about that Thunder Roll story I told you on this show, and he loved that. And to be able to sign my album and to give it to him and to Tricia and said, you guys inspired this. That was such an honor to get to meet my heroes in this business. And now to think I've replaced Vince on a recording. I have Colin Ray on my latest album. These are so fun. I got to meet John Michael Montgomery backstage. It's so fun to get to meet the people that kind of set you down this path. And I love that 90s sound. I love the 90s country. I think that's the sound that really got to me. But now I go back and I listen to the classics. I listen to the roots of country. I walk through that Country Music Hall of Fame and I see people like Jack Green, and others like him, little Jimmy and others that we miss so dearly. And just to think about, how much influence they had on the guys that inspired me too. So I love the old stuff too.
There's 2 things that you mentioned that I really want to reiterate, and that is, 1, we already have a Taylor Swift. We already have a Garth Brooks. We already have the Madonnas of the world. Be yourself. Don't try and emulate someone else because that's not original and you're not being creative. And then the other thing is, we just had this conversation on a previous podcast episode. There's only so many notes. There's only so many chords that can be constructed into a song. So once again, find those creative juices that you have.
Yeah.
And create that music that is yours. Take claim to it. Take ownership to it And you'll be surprised that now, obviously, if you come out with something that's kind of punk polka, there may not be a big audience for it.
Hey, I think we need some room for punk polka. I think that would be amazing. I did a song in this studio. You know what we called it? Beach Rave. And it was the coolest song. I wrote it with my friend Scott Evans, but it was like doom-a-doom-a-doom-a-doom. It almost sounded like that warm California sun, da-da-da. You know, it kind of had like a jingly feel that could be any California commercial. But I said, that's a killer rave. Beach rave is what we called it. So you can come up with your own genres. I interviewed on this set here the Beach Boys, and guess what the Beach Boys said? We made up words like that don't even exist. You know, I'm feeling good vibrations. She's giving me excitations. They said that word doesn't even exist. We came up with it. Isn't that cool? I love talking to other songwriters. I've had a chance to write with incredible guys, Steve Dorf, Tony Asher, you know, Michael Curtis, who's written a lot for Colin, you know, Gary Baker, a bunch of great songwriters. I just love working with such talent. And the beautiful part is yeah, they can get inspired by others, but they put their own twist to it. And I found that's what you got to be. If you want to stand out in this industry, be you. They told me when I came to Nashville, oh, Nathan, you got to play guitar. If you're going to be the front guy, you have to have the guitar in hand. But I'm a keyboard player. You know what Dean Sams at Lonestar does? He gets a V-shaped, you know, 2 keyboard stands, and he stands at the front. How about I do that? How about I be a little bit different? I mean, how many keyboard guys are out front do you see? Elton John, you know, whoever else, you know, Phil Vassar. There's a lot of good guys, but there's very few and far between when they play the keys. So why am I going to be pigeonholed into like the same thing that everybody else is doing? Yeah, I got me a guitar. I can do rhythm, but keys are where I shine. So why not go be who you are? Now, if you play the althorn, that may be a little bit more difficult to market, but hey, it's different. Stand out, you know what I'm saying? And you know what? I found that you gain respect from those that are in this industry when you find out who you are and you own it. Yeah, I mean, look at Jelly Roll right now, man. I mean, that guy's just being who he is. I like, you know, my father, they had to use Led Zeppelin's sound system back in the day, right? And over in Europe, because they had to be louder than all the girls. They had the loudest sound system, Led Zeppelin's sound system. So they went to see it, one of their last shows of their tour, because they wanted to hear it, plus it was Led Zeppelin. And it was a phenomenal show. And of course, you know, strategically, they keep the lights down. Encore, encore. Everyone's going crazy. So my dad and uncle's like, we better get out of here. You know, it's getting crazy. So they start leaving, and Led Zeppelin's manager stops them and says, hey, you guys can't leave yet. The band wants to meet you. Oh, you kidding? I said, I'm sure they're just being nice. They're probably exhausted. You know, says, no, you'll offend them if you leave. Come with me right now. So my father, during the encore, goes backstage. He almost gets hit in the head with a Frisbee. There's Led Zeppelin, the dads, playing catch with their kids while the crowd's going crazy. Completely different scene than what you saw on stage. And they see my dad and uncles, and Led Zeppelin goes, the Osmonds, oh, we love you guys. You know, just singing their praises. This is Led Zeppelin. And he says, hey, why don't you guys come up on stage when we do our encore, Stairway to Heaven? And the manager's like, no. You don't want the Osmonds on stage when you're doing Stairway to Heaven. He says, we want the Osmonds on stage. So my dad and uncles got to stand on the side of the stage and watch Led Zeppelin do Stairway to Heaven. You know what he said to me? If anyone ever asks you who says your dad's cool, you tell them Led Zeppelin said so. Even Zeppelin loves the Osmonds. You know how many rock band members, I mean like Def Leppard, who was just here in town, said, home of the Osmonds, and they started doing Crazy Horses, the song my dad wrote. I mean, my dad was a rock and roller. A lot of people in the States want to remember the pop scene, you know, the bubblegum pop of the Osmonds, which were great tunes. One Bad Apple, Go Away Little Girl, you know, The Proud One. There's so many great songs they had. But the thing is that they were known as one of the loudest rock bands of the 70s in Europe. And that, in fact, you know, the Osmonds almost went a different direction when Donny and Marie were going their direction. My dad and uncles were this close to calling themselves gladiators. And they were going to wear, just like War and just like Kiss, they were going to paint their faces up so nobody knew who it was. Because they loved rock and roll. But then they said, you know what, we have this huge opportunity for our brother and sister. They got this big national television show, and they took more of a producer standpoint, took more of a back seat. And push Donny and Marie out in the front, because they said it doesn't matter who's out front as long as it's an Osmond. Now that's support. That is, you know, they put their own dreams on hold. Then they went country in the 80s, had a lot of hits there. So our family's been very versatile. And I think in business, talking about the business side of music, you've got to learn to recreate yourself. Because if you're a one-trick pony, you're not going to be able to stick around very much in this business. You have to be able to do all sorts of things these days. Write, produce, dance, sing, act, put a mask on, peacock Donny, you know what I'm saying? Like the mask, you got to be able to entertain people. And one thing I love about people like Mick Jagger and Madonna and Donny Osmond is they've recreated themselves throughout their careers. I mean, look what Donny's done. I look at him as a real good mentor. You know, not only has he been like the host of the $1 Million Pyramid, and he went on and won first runner-up on The Masked Singer, you know, and he's done movies, and he's done musicals like Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. What can the guy not do? And now he's out there 40-plus city tour right now with his Vegas show, with his own residency. I got to do the background vocals for Donny and Marie show at the Flamingo. It was a lot of fun, but you know, it's nice to have some family members in here that have been through the knocks and the pitfalls. And it was a hard thing for my uncle, you know, when he was, what, 21, and he's already a has-been. This business will chew you up and spit you out, and he went through a dark time. Go read his book, Behind the Smile, you know, like life is just what you make it. And he almost got in a fight. He hung out with Billy Idol. He pierced his ear one night. His wife cried. He took it out, you know. But the thing is that Michael Jackson, sitting in his car, says to Donny, "Donny, your name is poison. People don't want to let you grow up. It's like the Brady Bunch, right? What kind of controversy can we get you into?" This is Michael Jackson talking. And Donny's like, "I don't want to get in a controversy. I just want people to like me again." Anyways, that was a neat moment with Michael Jackson. But the thing is that he went through some dark times. He even tried Broadway out. And this little Johnny Jones Goes to War, and guess what? It opened and closed the same night. That has got to stab you in the heart. So when I saw him at the premiere of Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat with Andrew Lloyd Webber sitting up in the balcony watching, and I watched my uncle get a standing ovation in the middle of a show, in the middle of the show, with Andrew Lloyd Webber watching. You know how much that meant? Because I knew what he'd been through. He'd been through hell. Oh, he'd been through hell. But he said something in USA Today that I loved. I mean, he had to even come out as a mystery artist, as Soldier of Love, just so people would like him again. So they had to like the song before they liked the artist. It's a hard business. But you know what? He said in USA Today, "I learned that when I embraced who I was, when I stopped taking myself so seriously, the people started to like me again."
That's what it's all about in the business. We're going to take another break, get another word in for a couple of our sponsors. And then when we come back, I'm going to find out what's next for Nathan Osmond.
Branding. What is it really? It goes by many names. Marketing, licensing, and image. When in reality, it's 7 key branding formulas that all need to harmonize perfectly. Mess up just one formula and you have compromised the whole brand build. Dead Horse Branding facilitates all 7 formulas under one roof, building, promoting, and marketing all brands at all different stages of their level. We are a marketing team's dream, and we were built to service talent, artist managers, record labels, independent artists, iconic brands, legacy estates, and startups. Rooted in music and seated across other industries like fashion, various talent, hospitality, authors, interior designers, lifestyle brands, and corporate entities. The 7 branding formulas do not discriminate. 7 branding formulas, all in one swift movement. Sick of beating that dead horse? Come to Dead Horse. Please visit us at deadhorsebranding.com or send us an email to info@deadhorsebranding.com.
Back in the studio here in Nashville, Tennessee, and Provo, Utah.
That's right. Welcome to Provo.
Yeah, you know, it's been ages since I've been there. I got to make a trip out there, and you and I got to get together and break some bread.
Come to our studios. We could do a live broadcast from here. You know, that's what I love about this facility is we got this big TV set that I'm on right here. And I've learned that when life throws you lemons, here's how we got the set. My brother David is the host of Wonderama. okay? Now, when COVID shut down not only the whole industry, but the city of New York, where they host that show, Utah was still open. And I said to my brother, listen, why don't you come to our studios? We'll film it here at Rock Canyon Studios, and you're still on the air. So they came out here. They loved the show so much, they set up this set. They built it in New York and shipped it out here. And when they were done with it, they said, you guys want to keep the set? I'm like, heck yeah, New York built set. This is great. All we ask is that you take the W's out of these little boxes and you can use it for whatever you want. So I got a free New York built set here in our studios. We've used this in movies. Thurl Bailey from the Utah Jazz did his Christmas special. He loves to sing. You know, we had all sorts we have the news in here. This thing's been used for a lot of things, including businesssideofmusic.com right here with Bob Bender. It's fun. But you know what? That's the point, is that you have to create the opportunities. I actually, during COVID, even filmed a movie in this studio that was supposed to have been in Nashville, but Nashville was shut down. So the director of the film came to one of my concerts and said, would you be in a movie? I said, I'd love to. He said, I want to cast you as you. I played Nathan Osmond in a film called Even in Dreams, and we filmed it right here. Allison Arngren from Little House on the Prairie played this nasty Nashville manager. And here, this was the TV set for the movie. So we're on a movie set right now. But the fun thing is that I love the creative side of this business, and you talked about what's next. You've always got to be asking that question in any business. I mean, let's talk business. If you rest on your laurels, you're out, because you always got to be one step ahead of the customer. You've always got to be coming up, okay, I've got a release coming up here, and you got to plan it. One thing that Greg Sperry taught me, he's Marie's manager, he says, you got to learn the business side of this business. Most artists don't. That's why if they get any hits at all, they're a flash in the can, right? It's just in the pan. It's like gone. One-hit wonders. We've heard that how many times? And most are no-hit wonders. I mean, think how much variety and options we have in this business right now. So if you're trying to copy somebody else, no, that's something that a lot of these startup artists are doing. They're trying to find what's Taylor Swift's latest release, and let me go do a little cover song and put it on YouTube, and let me ride her success. There's wisdom in doing that, because that's strategy. I mean, Rick Barker teaches, he's Taylor Swift's, original manager and a good friend. And he's got a whole business now because of his business sense, teaching new artists how to build their labels, build their brands. Because the days of A&R are gone. You got to have a following, or they're not even going to touch you in Nashville. You know what I'm saying? So you got to think like a business owner. And what do the people want, right? And then you go and create it. But don't be the one who's like just camping on other people. If you want to stand out, you've got to find out what your signature moves are, Michael Jackson or Madonna. Whatever your signature moves are, own it. We now have the ability, Bob, to do what we're doing here on podcasts. I got a podcast called Achieving Awesomeness Now that's now been picked up as a national radio show. I'm on the air every day at 12:30 and 4:30 p.m. Eastern. And that just started in my basement with me and a little Yeti microphone. So you can create magic from your basement. I drove here today talking about Bob Bender and being on your show today on my Facebook Live. How cool is that? I got people in England listening in right now because of the technology. We have entire television studios in our pockets. We have social media that we didn't have before. I teach people in all sorts of industries how to really take their brand to the next business. I just launched a business called Stomp, Standout Media Pros, where I'm training realtors, brokers, loan officers, how to take their brands to the next level, because I'm bringing in everything that I learned from the entertainment world, and I'm showing them that it works in their industry as well. I mean, you got to create opportunities in life. Look at this studio. This all came to be because I met a good guy named Gaynor, who you met today. And we found ways to create synergy. Gaynor, how can I bring more business to you? And I find that when you help enough people get in life what they want, you're going to get what you want tenfold. So I'm glad I have a father that taught me some business sense. He's very creative on the right side, but he has these ideas that you just got to take one and run with it. My grandmother Osmond, she wanted to make a difference. Here's a little girl that was born in Idaho in a 2-bedroom cabin, which is now a museum. Because not only is she the mother of the Osmonds, but number two, she wanted to make a difference. You know, when you want to make a difference in the world, I think that our Maker makes a way for you to do so. Because this little gal, she had this little foundation to help deaf kids because her two oldest were deaf, Verl and Tom, and she called it Osmond Foundation for Children of the World. Well, listen to this. She and Mick Shannon and Joe Lake got together in our house. My mother made tuna fish sandwiches, and they had this idea with John Schneider from Dukes of Hazzard who came. And get this, they wanted to create a new foundation. We already had a 501c3, we already had a studio, and they needed both of those. So we said, why don't we take Osmond Foundation for Children of the World and use our studio to do a telethon? Let's change the name of it now, because the whole cause changed to help kids with all sorts of different challenges, and we'll call it Children's Miracle Network, because it's not about the Osmonds, it's about the kids. And that's where that was born, at our kitchen table on Osmond Lane in Provo, Utah, with tuna fish sandwiches. Now it's raised over $7 billion for children's hospitals around the world. That's my grandmother's legacy. Now, when she was on her deathbed, she couldn't talk because she had a tracheotomy. And she had been in a coma. She comes out of this coma. She reaches over to tap my father's hand, who was sitting by her bedside. And she was asking for a pen and a paper. She wanted to write something down for my father. And when she got the paper, I have this letter, and it says, Alan, there is no limit to the good we can do if we don't care who gets the credit.
Amen. Amen.
What if we lived our careers that way? What if we don't make it all about ourselves, but we make it about our audience? What if we make it about our fans? What if we make it about the team? If we make it all about ourselves, we make a really small package. You know what I'm saying? So give credit to those that deserve the credit. Today I've been able to mention a few names of people. I would not be where I'm at without them. And the musicians that have played, the songwriters that I've written, like Marwena Diame, Yo Cassiers, Gary Baker, Matt Johnson, Frank Meyer, Dean Sams, Lonestar, who played on my stuff. I wouldn't be where I am without all those guys. I told you I remember the place where I was because I had produced a 1940s big band show called Pacific Swing Hawaii from 2010 to 2011. That's right when my first single, Sweet, hit the airwaves. And as I was driving to rehearsal, right there by Pearl Harbor, coming over the hill, I hear, it's like, that's my song. I didn't even call in to request it. First time I ever heard one of my songs on the radio was in Hawaii. And I tell you, I learned something about myself, Bob. I scream like a girl. And oh my heck, about wrecked my car. But that's when my first single started climbing all the way to #1. Then the next one started climbing. I was done with that show, so I was back on the mainland. And I got a guy, Jason Aldean's dad, calls up Charlie Ammerman of Pretty World Records, and he says, Jason Aldean's going to kick Nathan Osmond's beep this week on the radio. Charlie goes, how much you want to bet? And two good old boys start making a bet about Nathan Osmond music. He goes, how about the biggest steak in town? He goes, bring it. And guess who won? Nathan Osmond won that week. And this was his Red Dirt anthem, dude. Like chilling on a dirt road. I'm like, I stayed ahead of Jason that week. And it just became fun, healthy competition. But we won the steak. So, that's what this business is. It's supposed to be fun. If you're taking yourself way too seriously, if you're buying your own press releases, stop it. Be real. That's what I've learned in this business. When you start to be real with people and vulnerable, heck, I've cried on Bob's show here today. Bob, you're a good-looking man. I love that hair, dude. So fun. You got to get to know Bob Bender. Thank you so much for having me on your show. This is awesome that you're covering the business side of this business because it's a fun business. But you got to go into it with your eyes open.
You do. You do. And Nathan, I can't thank you enough for taking time out of what I know is an extremely busy schedule. And of course, we got to give a shout out to Camille for setting this all up.
Thank you, Camille. You're amazing. Camille Matthews. We appreciate all she does. She's amazing.
And we're going to do this again.
Let's do it.
All right.
I got a lot more stories where these ones came from.
Looking forward to it.